What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and it looks like my fears were sadly true, and the rumors surrounding Star Wars' latest show, The Acolyte, will come to fruition. There's quite a bit to go over today, and later on we'll speak on how early reviews are even saying that this show is dead on arrival, and I have also seen the first 2 episodes, and I'll speak about that too later on. This is a doozy. So, recently Chris Gore of Film Threat was on Geeks and Gamers. He, alongside his co-host Alan Ng, confirms what is going on with Star Wars The Acolyte, yet Chris went far more into the entire thing than Alan did. Maybe Chris Gore doesn't care about Disney's NDAs, but according to him, Star Wars will officially be dead following this 3rd episode, which airs next week, as of the making of this video. I figure I read you what Chris Gore said. This was compiled by that Park Place, and I quote, "I'll just say this, these first 2 episodes are pretty basic. They get you into the story and the world. Episode 3, I'm warning you now, it is going to completely lose everyone. They completely redefine what the Force is. You're going to see 2 mothers conceive twins, a bunch of witches that are basically the Jedi turned into cops and child protective services. It's like the CPS of the galaxy. Episode 1 and 2, whatever, it's fine. Episodes 3 and 4, get ready for pronouns in Star Wars, it's happening. But episode 3, I'm literally considering having a funeral for Star Wars. Literally, get everyone to dress up, wear dark glasses, give eulogies, play organ church music in the background, because after episode 3 of The Acolyte, it will cause a lot of discussion aside from the fact that the show is cheap looking. For all the money they spent, it looks cheap. The exterior scenes in forests look shot on a soundstage. It looks very, very obvious. It still lacks male energy. It lacks male energy. The women that put together the show cannot make Star Wars for the audience that has loved it for years. It is just devoid of everything you used to love, not even shreds. It'll change things forever, and I don't think anyone's going to like it, and we'll get a lot of lesbians in space, lesbian witches that conceive children, so get ready for episode 3. Leslie Headland's effectively taken the corpse and skin of Star Wars like Buffalo Bill and just put it on to tell her story. It's grotesque, it's filled with narcissism, all the white guys are sidelined or weak, all of them in this show. There are 2 mothers. In the first episode, listen very carefully, she says, "You lost your mothers and family in a fire." I had to go, wait, did she say mothers? I rewinded it, mothers, that's episode 1. And then that pays off in episode 3. You see the story of these 2 young girls. The actress is terrible that plays the twins. It's like the death of a friend, a beloved friend, a death of a franchise that we all loved in the past, end quote. There's a lot to unpack there, but this coincides with what Alan of Film Threat also was saying, that the Force is quite literally female going forward. So we now have direct confirmation that via the leaks from Chris here and more leaks that I'll share shortly, that Star Wars is pro-woman in every single regard going forward. As I feared, The Acolyte will push forward a Force is female agenda within its premise, and I can't say that I'm surprised. The fact we're going full-blown Marvel Comics America Chavez here is honestly incredible to see for all the wrong reasons. In case you don't know, the Marvel Comics superhero America Chavez, who is a part of the much newer Legion of Superheroes from Marvel, is a girl who was conceived from a different dimension where she has 2 mothers. You likely remember this character in Doctor Strange 2. They even play a part where Chavez's lesbian parents are shown together for exposition reasons. This concept is now leaking its way into Star Wars, and it's becoming canon. So now these witches that Chris Gore alludes to, who we know are led by Jodie Turner-Smith's character, uses their magic to conceive of twin girls without the need of a male figure being involved. Remember that Leslie Headland is a lesbian woman herself, and she is quite literally changing Star Wars into her own Tumblr fan fiction at this point. Don't believe me that the Force is female and gay? Recently, Leslie Headland and Amanda Stenberg, who plays the twin girls in Acolyte, were being interviewed on The Wrap. I don't have any clever way of segueing this because just watch this clip.
Ask you both because this is, I would say, arguably the gayest Star Wars, I think, by a considerable margin. And are you excited about that? Are you
Not
bracing
the gayest
yourself?
Star Wars. Not the.
It's pretty gay, let's be honest. Leslie, How do you feel?
Am I gay?
Are you,
Yes.
Well, no, I know
Yeah.
you are gay, but I'm asking, are you excited about putting this, this is going to be a talking point.
Is it going to be a talking point?
I'm sure some.
Because nerds are gay.
Well,
Yeah.
some nerds are very not gay and are very threatened by gay
Well, that's
stuff.
true. But
Yeah.
in my world, nerds are gay.
Okay. Was this the fun element of
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. And yet people have told me that it's the gayest Star Wars, and I frankly
You're offended?
into it. No.
I think that Star Wars is so gay already.
Okay.
I mean, have you seen the fits? We'd be like, look how gay this is, and then send each other a reference photo.
And are you telling me with a straight face that C-3PO is straight?
They're a couple. That's what I think. But this is more outward.
I think it's canon that R2-D2 is a lesbian.
Oh,
Ooh.
interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Ask Filoni. Okay.
Ask for
Can you
one.
imagine?
Yeah, talk to Filoni.
As you can see, this entire show's identity and existence is completely tied to being gay and a woman, which the creator is both. I know we've had creators in the past self-insert themselves into stories, like I Am Not Starfire for example, but the Acolyte takes the absolute crown in this regard. Disney, in their infinite wisdom, have decided after the constant decline of their movies and shows to not course correct, but instead triple or quadruple down with the message. This confirms to me that what Disney is doing here is very much like what other franchises have been doing lately too. Change the lore deliberately in order to cause old fans who were used to the old ways of that franchise, think Marvel, Warhammer, and so on, and then drive them out completely with ideas that they won't support. Think female custodians in Warhammer's case, or this forces female with Star Wars. And by doing this, Disney and these companies can then replace you with newer fans that are accepting of these ideas, which then in turn creates a new kind of fandom that is receptive and willing to accept the radical changes these creators and activists want. The Acolyte is absolutely not being made for you or I. It is being made for the woke white liberal woman who is convinced that her cat is trans and a vegan. We are simply not the targeted audience for the show anymore, dear viewer. You and I are seen as obsolete. We are the problem, and because we don't accept their ways, they will simply continue to turn the dial until we leave completely. And I think I can speak for all of us when I say if that is what Disney wants to happen, then that's what will go down in history. Changes like this are kind of like how Marvel's Secret Invasion turned Rhodey into a Skrull. What I mean by that is they retroactively made past movies worse by inserting new ideas. This Acolyte change doesn't make any sense. We know that two women cannot conceive a child using their DNA. Biology and nature dictates that a man's sperm must be utilized in order to create life. And this fundamental building block of the universe sickens the woke activists of our world. And they will do anything they can in order to contort and ruin whatever we love to fit their new world agenda. In my previous video, in case you didn't watch it, I theorized what Star Wars will do is use the concept of the gods of Mortis to enact their new agenda. To quickly recap, the Mortis gods were in the Clone Wars show. There's the son who represents the dark side, the daughter is the light, and the father is the balance. I believe that the Acolytes will push the idea that women are inherently more powerful with the light side of the Force because they can tap into the daughter as an entity when it comes to using it. And this explains why the Sith, who are usually predominantly men within these stories, although not entirely, but the most powerful Sith, seem to be exclusively men. And this could be explained that the reason being is that when men tap into the dark side, they are communing with the sun, which is obviously a man as well. So Too Long Didn't Read It version, basically, the theory is that men are more proficient in the dark side because of their connection to the sun. And women are more proficient with the light side because of their connection to the daughter, easy enough to understand. But this then ripples the idea further because it also means that Jedi, by definition, will always be the strongest if they are women and not men. Meaning that Rey is more powerful than Anakin when it comes to using the light side of the Force, not because of individual power levels or abilities, but simply because Rey is a woman. This further means that with all of this information, the Jedi Council can only be reborn and led into prosperity if a woman leads the charge. Because if a man leads the Jedi Council, it will fall into disarray because of men's inherent connection and drive to tap into the dark side. Take Palpatine, Anakin, and more as examples. It honestly fits so well into what we've seen that it kind of angers me because Disney can now make men the villains exclusively and keep their female girl bosses as the heroes going forward. This means the Jedi Council we saw in Phantom was always doomed to fail because it was predominantly led by male Jedi. which by Disney's new definitions of the Force were always going to fail because they are not women. Funny how that works. But it gets worse, fellas. It always gets worse. A friend of the channel is fellow YouTuber WDW Pro. And according to his sources, they have told him exactly what this controversial change is going to be, and I quote, "According to a source that I have, Lauren, Kathleen Kennedy, and Leslie Headland are going to do something in The Acolyte that is going to essentially end what remaining fans they have. And that is, they are literally going to change the Force itself, into being literally female, gender female Force. The source who has relayed to me some stuff, they believe this will be so bad that there's nothing left to do except reboot Star Wars. They think Kathleen Kennedy cannot continue, or Star Wars cannot." End quote. So it is as I feared, then what I've been saying this entire time will come to pass. Disney is going to genuinely change the fundamental lore and idea of the Force when Episode 3 of The Acolyte comes out. They will turn the Force into a female entity, hence what I meant by the daughter from the gods of Mortis. This daughter will likely become the living embodiment of the Force itself, and women will become the chosen saviors of the galaxy going forward. I think once this gets confirmed 100% next week, we're going to see a backlash unlike anything we've seen before. I would be hard-pressed for Disney to find any other conceivable way to piss off the fanbase any more than they have already. And I think what Dave Filoni has been hinting at with his Ahsoka show, and by the way, Dave Filoni openly embraces and loves The Acolyte. He has even said that he thinks it's amazing that when he showed the statues of the father in such an Ahsoka, this was foreshadowing all of this. Remember as well, friends, that during Ahsoka, we do see Anakin and Ahsoka speaking and even fighting to an extent when Ahsoka falls into the ocean of Cetos. The World Between Worlds, it's called. This is basically Star Wars' answer to time travel, if you will. In case you don't know, The World Between Worlds was created by Dave Filoni, who directed Ahsoka and was first introduced in Star Wars Rebels, which Filoni also made as well. In that show, Ezra Bridger, who's a Padawan, discovers that this dimension can be accessed when communing with the gods of Mortis. Yes, the very same that have the female Force entity and all of that. They were explicitly told that the access to this world is given by communing with the daughter, whereas leaving the World Between Worlds is done by the Son, or the dark side of the Force. This further implies that not only are men just weaker than women in the Star Wars universe now, but that female Jedi also have a much easier and natural pathway in front of them when it comes to communing with and tampering with time travel. So women are not only better than men, they can tear apart reality too. Very cool. This is not at all stupid, is it? Anyway, we do note that Anakin communes with Ahsoka in the World Between Worlds. It's somewhat hinted that this is Anakin's Force ghost that's speaking to Ahsoka. And my assumption during this scene, of course I could be wrong, but please let me know what you think as well, is that Anakin to some degree has accepted his role as the father within Mortis and may have become the next father after the previous one had died. And since the father's role is to bring balance to the Force, and Anakin, upon defeating Palpatine in Return of the Jedi and dying himself, he has, as I said, brought balance to the Force, and this would allow Anakin, who has shed his Vader persona, to become the next father. It's hinted as well that Ahsoka might become the next daughter, which also confirms everything else I already explained in this video too. Ahsoka is obviously a woman, the daughter is a woman, therefore it would make sense why Ahsoka would be able to be the next Mortis god daughter. As for the son, we don't know yet. It could be Baylan Skoll, or it could be someone else entirely, possibly even Kylo Ren. But as of now, I cannot say for sure. Regardless, this would be Disney's way of creating a loophole within their own timeline, and allowing them to keep characters people like around even when they're long dead. Like Anakin or Kylo, for example, although none of this explains why Ahsoka, for example, is nowhere to be seen in the new Disney trilogy of films, since those take place after the Ahsoka television show. The only logical answer to me anyways is that Ahsoka at this point has already become the daughter of Mortis, and that's why we don't see her. But this may just be a convenient plot device so Rosario Dawson can play Ahsoka in an upcoming movie or project, and her lack of aging doesn't need to be explained because the Mortis world and all of that is where time stops completely. Although, the World Between Worlds is also in a lot of ways our last hope, if you will, when it comes to Star Wars. Which you're likely asking, how is that? Well, like I've explained, the concept alludes to time travel, and during Rebels, Ezra wants to use the world to turn back time and save his master. But this doesn't happen because Ahsoka convinces him if Ezra's master lives, who sacrificed his life to save the rest of the Rebels cast, that if he lived, the rest of them, including Ezra and Ahsoka, would end up dying instead. And Ahsoka knows the implications of such time travel since she could have used the worlds to save Anakin, but then that would have created an entirely new reality. Would it have been better or worse? We don't know. The point here is that the Acolyte's changes when it comes to female entities and whatnot is going to be nuclear, there's no doubt about that. And when you factor in space, lesbian witches scissoring themselves and then giving birth, it's no surprise most fans are going to wash their hands clean of this nonsense. Which then begs the question, what does Disney do? Well, there's two paths going forward in my mind, and this is all that can really happen. One is that Disney rejects the fandom and continues down this path until eventually only women can tap into the Force and men can only tap into the dark side or some kind of nonsense. Which then brings up the question, then couldn't a man identify as a woman and then tap into the light side anyway? Which would be funny since Disney pushes that sort of stuff already aplenty, but of course not, because gender only matters when it hinges on their politics like this. The other idea here, which I do think eventually once all avenues are depleted and there's nothing left to do in order to save Star Wars, is that Disney, or in the far future when they ruin themselves and get bought out or something, that whoever ends up being in charge of Star Wars can effectively retcon everything within that universe. Which is, you guessed it, by using the world between worlds to have someone jump back through time to the point before any of this nonsense has happened, and completely alter the timeline and essentially soft reboot the entire Star Wars franchise. Although this wouldn't necessarily fix the Acolyte since it technically is a story that happens prior to the Phantom Menace by well over 100 years. But by using the worlds, a soft reboot can be done that erases the damage Disney has done to the franchise, and give the Star Wars IP and the fanbase a second chance at life, which I think ultimately the Acolyte's reception will be so nuclear bad that post its release, there will be no conceivable way this franchise survives the utter apathy that will come from it. People will not accept this, and I don't blame them, and Disney's only avenues are to either keep doubling down till they destroy this IP completely, or they admit defeat and course correct via time travel. There is genuinely no fixing a universe like this when concepts like female Force entities get introduced as canon. Isn't it nice to know that the reason why Rey, who basically has zero training in being a Jedi, can beat Palpatine in 1v1 combat? But Anakin, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, Yoda, and so many others stood no chance simply because they aren't women? Because that's what they're insinuating here, that being a woman is akin to being more powerful as a Jedi than someone like Yoda who's trained as a Jedi for literally hundreds of years. The Force truly is female, my friends, and I think that the Acolyte will ruin Star Wars in its entirety going forward. In terms of reviews, Acolyte is sitting in the high 80s on Rotten Tomatoes currently with an abysmal audience score too. One review got taken down immediately, which was from Rolling Stone because it was negative of the show. That article is titled, "The Acolyte, this Star Wars prequel series isn't a force to be reckoned with. Even a veteran Jedi Master will lose patience with the latest Disney Plus addition to the canon, which focuses on a pair of twins' revenge and snoozing." Rolling Stones magazine essentially explains that the entire series from the first 4 episodes that were made available for review convinced them that the show didn't need to exist at all. Here's some of what they said, and I quote, "The newest Disney Plus Star Wars series, The Acolyte, at least attempts to openly confront the reality that the Jedi are smug, complacent, and kind of terrible. But the execution of that idea is spotty throughout the 4 episodes given to critics. And the decision to set it a century before the rise of the Empire seems to defeat the purpose of the whole thing, because the Jedi of the Phantom Menace have learned exactly 0 lessons. The Acolyte was created by writer-director Leslie Headland and built the whole story around the institutional failings of the Jedi. A young woman named May is seeking revenge on a quartet of Jedi Masters, the Wise Soul, the Stoic Indara, Wookiee Master Kelnaka, and young Torbin, all for a family tragedy, and the more we learn about the history, the clearer it becomes that Jedi law and a question of who is and isn't allowed to study the Force plays an unfortunately huge role. Most of the pieces are uneven at best, if not simply underwhelming. Carrie-Anne Moss is used well in an opening action set piece, once again getting to work with the bullet time effects 25 years after the first Matrix, but is otherwise wasted, and the later fight scenes aren't as dynamic. Even so, the particular moment in which Headland has chosen to tell the story seems too confined. In The Phantom Menace, the Jedi have been overseeing a peaceful, Sith-free galaxy for 1,000 years. They are confident in the rightness of all of their decisions. The situation with May, Osha, and May's mysterious, seemingly Sith Lord Master raises questions that fly in the face of where the Jedi are philosophically when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon find little Anakin in the sands of Tatooine. In other words, this feels like a narrative dead end that doesn't automatically preclude a good series. The fact that no one learns anything here could be the whole tragic point of the story Headland and company are telling. It's good to see another Star Wars project that, like Andor, interrogates some of the franchise's fundamental assumptions. Entertainment-wise, though, the first half of The Acolyte is unfortunately a lot closer to the Book of Boba Fett, end quote. So I can see why Disney or whoever nuked Rolling Stone's review, because they clearly say straight up that The Acolyte feels pointless as a show. And it offers nothing new but narrative dead ends, and ending the review saying The Acolyte is more like the Book of Boba Fett is the worst thing they could have said. Since that show was complete ass from beginning to end, I think what we're witnessing here, fellas, is the worst thing Disney Star Wars has ever created yet. They have somehow outdid themselves when compared to The Last Jedi. They are exceeding their own terrible expectations, only in reverse. There is nothing here that has been done before, and what it really creates that is new will do nothing but ruin the entire series for millions of fans worldwide. It genuinely feels like Leslie Headland and Kathleen Kennedy did not do their homework or research when they made this series. And it simply exists because a queer woman wanted to take what Kathleen Kennedy said once and literally turn the Force female. That's the only reason why the show exists. I remember when Overlord DVD like a year ago said that Bob Iger tried to cancel this project, but Kennedy made it happen anyways. And the only endgame reason I can think of is that Kennedy wants to destroy Star Wars completely. There is no other explanation as to why this show exists the way that it does. This is simply the result of a bitter old woman who refuses to admit that she's wrong, damning an entire galaxy far, far away, all because her ego is too big for her own good. And as I was writing this, The Acolyte has just come out, and I have also watched the first 2 episodes. And to be real with you guys, there isn't much to say about it. The plot is meandering, the characters are forgettable, and nothing cool has happened. They also don't seem to know how to do cliffhangers properly either. The second episode just ends with the Wookiee Jedi Kelnaka, or whatever its name is, just walking into a hut. I'm not kidding you. The makeup is also weirdly terrible. There's this one Jedi who dies pretty much immediately that the evil twin girl kills. And this is how he looks, as you can see on screen. It's just the worst hair and makeup you've ever seen. I couldn't believe that this was a show with a $180 million budget somehow. There's also a fat Jedi, which you can also see on screen here, which also makes no sense. Because Jedis are warriors, they train tirelessly to hone their body and mind. A fat Jedi would not exist. None of this makes any sense. The plot is basically the evil Rick James haircut girl wants to kill 4 Jedis that have something to do with her home being destroyed. And the other twin, who is good, is named Osha, and she is so goddamn bland. I kid you not. She is a nothing character so far. I genuinely don't have anything good to say about this show at all so far. Like, I'm trying, and I can't find anything. I also noticed in the scene where Soul is introduced, the Squid Game actor guy, his Padawans are all very diverse children of color. And not a single one of those children is a white boy. They're all black, Asian, and there's one single white girl Padawan. The agenda is very clear with this show, and I don't know what else to say about this, to be real with you. And remember that these 2 episodes were supposed to be the good ones that were sent to reviewers before it goes off the rails completely. And if this is the good ones, I struggle to see what exactly they are trying to do here to begin with. Because this feels dead on arrival, literally. Also, there's a scene where Osha, the good twin, is repairing a ship in space, and a side of the ship explodes, exposing a fire. Let me repeat that for you. A fire breaks out in space, where there's no oxygen. Never mind Jedi powers. Leslie Headland doesn't even know how fire works in the real world either. FYI, fire, it needs oxygen to exist. It cannot ignite without it. Just, my god. That's all I really have to say about the show so far from the first 2 episodes. There's nothing. It's an empty void of a product. Nothing interesting happens, and it drags, and it's very dull. This is genuine dog shit so far, and I think it's safe to say that Star Wars in all of its entirety is as good as dead within Disney's hands. And I say this with all sincerity and honesty, so far The Acolyte is somehow worse than Book of Boba Fett. The Force may be female, but the Force is not with this show or franchise anymore. And it's time we truly let Star Wars die for good. As always, thank you for watching. Subscribe, share, and like this video. Let me know what you think as well. Did you like the first 2 episodes? What didn't you like? Thanks to my patrons as always too. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.